want to talk a little bit about Alzheimer's because I know it impacts Alzheimer's, dementia, impacts far more families than you think it does. It touches so many people in such a profound and kind of negative way. And right now, there is a woman up at the University of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, who's the distinguished professor of psychology, Dr. Karyn Frick. She's also the chief scientific officer at Estrogenics. She is doing research on Alzheimer's in women, trying to push for more knowledge and cure prevention. She joins us now on the Big 89. Dr. Frick, thanks for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So tell me how this journey went along for you and what made you decide I want to focus not just on the Alzheimer's, but how it's impacting women and how is it impacting women?
Right. Well, I've been interested in memories and how memories are formed since I was young. That's where I started my research career. And Alzheimer's was always fascinating because it's a disease that robs us really of ourselves. I mean, our memories are what makes each individual who they are, and it's just absolutely devastating when you can't remember past events, family members, and so on. So it's as a researcher, very compelling kind of disease to try to work on. And as I was doing my research, realized that women were at significantly greater risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. And that's true. Even women do have a longer life expectancy than men. So part of it is age, because Alzheimer's is really a disease of aging. The longer age is the greatest risk factor for the disease. The longer we live, the greater our chances of developing Alzheimer's. But that's more so for women than for men. And we think that that's due, at least in part, to hormone changes during menopause, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I have not heard that before, Dr. Frick. Thank you. What? So hormone changes during menopause that's like the diving board for why women would get Alzheimer's before men? And
unfortunately, yes.
It's hormones.
Yes, it's hormones. So it turns out that the cells in the brain that are important for making memories are also dependent on hormones like estrogens that are made in the ovaries and other tissues in the body, but that we most frequently associate with menopause. Those neurons really depend on estrogens for normal functioning. And so during menopause, when we see aging of the ovaries and this massive loss of estrogens in women, we think that puts those cells at greater risk for the kinds of age-related changes that happen in the brain normally.
And a lot of women will do hormone replacement therapy for so many reasons, but a lot of people shy away from it because they don't want to take the extra estrogen. It's like it's kind of it's like a secular, so you don't want to do the replacement, but because it could cause this or could cause this, but you might need it to help you stay healthier. Yes. Tell me more.
Yeah, a lot of women are reluctant to take any kind of hormone therapy because of they hear these risks of breast cancer and uterine cancer, and there are some of those risks, but they're really quite small, and especially for women who don't have a family history of breast or uterine cancer. Estrogens can be quite effective for relieving a lot of the menopausal symptoms like hot flashes. In particular, estrogens are excellent at treating hot flashes. And, today's hormone therapy is different from what your mom may have been on 20 years ago. They're very much more targeted for a specific form of estrogen that really works well to relieve some of those menopausal symptoms that are very bothersome.
But can that help women then when they reach the age of potentially having Alzheimer's disease?
Yes, we think so. So that we think that estrogens can help delay the onset of Alzheimer's disease, reduce the risk. And what we're working with in my company is trying to develop compounds that are safer forms of estrogens that do the beneficial things that estrogens do in the brain. So we get those benefits on things like cognitive function and memory, but without some of those undesirable side effects that have been reported in the news.
Dr. Frick, I may be making some assumptions about Alzheimer's, and if anything is incorrect here, you can just tell me. It feels like a lot of people get it. The people that I've known in my life who have gotten it when they were a bit older, say 60s and 70s. And what you're talking about with the hormones and estrogen around menopause, what we're talking about is quite a bit earlier. So you're saying that women are going to have the potential to get it at a far earlier age because of that reason, because I don't know if people really equate that with somebody, say, in their early to mid 50s.
Well, that's a really, really good question. So what we now know from research in the last decade or so is that the brain changes that contribute to Alzheimer's disease, the dementia that you would see in people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, starts early. It starts in your 40s and 50s. Wow. And so what we are trying to do is to keep the brain healthy through the 40s and 50s so that we either, delay Alzheimer's indefinitely in people or prevent it from happening at all. There is a form of Alzheimer's disease that's more rare that does strike people early. It's an early onset form of the disease that strikes people in their 40s and 50s. But that's not what most people are familiar with because the vast majority of people with Alzheimer's will develop it in their, say, 60s and beyond. But what we're talking about here are these risk factors that would contribute to that late onset Alzheimer's disease that you're familiar with.
So, Dr. Frick, I want to get a little technical here. We know that the amyloid buildup or the amyloid deposits found in a brain are a component of Alzheimer's disease. And that's what they're finding when they're doing, when someone has passed away, they find out what's going on in their brain.
Yeah.
But the amyloid has also been shown to say this is fighting off perhaps an infection of the brain. So it's helping the brain's immune system. So is Alzheimer's a byproduct of our brain's immune system?
That's a really good question, and that's been receiving a lot more attention lately. Certainly there is this buildup of amyloid in the brain. That is no question. Although you can still see amyloid sometimes in the brain of older people who don't have Alzheimer's disease, but the question of whether the amyloid is the cause or a symptom of the disease is, still something that's being debated. I think what is increasingly evident is that there is significant neuroinflammation in an Alzheimer's brain, and what we're trying to figure out as researchers is whether that neuroinflammation is contributing to the buildup of amyloid, or is the amyloid that's causing the neuroinflammation. So it's difficult to know. It's sort of a chicken and egg problem with Alzheimer's. We see these things, these changes in the brain, but it's difficult to know what causes what. And some of the more recent treatments that have been approved by the FDA are targeted at trying to reduce the levels of amyloid in the brain, and early studies, although those drugs are somewhat controversial, do suggest some benefit to cognitive function. So there may be something to this notion of if we can reduce the amyloid load in the brain, we can potentially improve people's outcomes. I
got to tell you, the information has been just incredible. Dr. Karyn Frick with the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and the company Estrogenics. Thank you so much for joining us on the Big 89. We appreciate all the information you shared with us.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Frick.
Wow.
Yeah, fantastic.
I know the more she said, the more we could have gone on for probably 10 more minutes.
Oh, it's fascinating.
Because the more she said, the more we were like, what about?
Yeah.
So really eye-opening for sure.